So a quick summary in the first part of the lesson, then we will continue inshallah. In this part, we said that Darwin went in a voyage around the world. His voyage started with visiting, look, he visited Australia. Here we go. Australia. And then Africa. Went to Europe. Then South America. He didn't visit North America or Asia. Okay. Then in this lesson we said we are going to see what made Darwin think about the evolution. In the beginning, the word evolution means a change. You see this change is beneficial, you see it is not beneficial, you like it or not. A change that happens in a population is called evolution. Darwin developed a scientific theory of biological evolution that explains how the modern organisms evolved over long periods of time through descent from common ancestors. He said one organism evolved to another, then this evolved to another, and this evolved to another, and so on. If you have 100 species, all those have evolved from a common ancestor. Then we started speaking about, after starting his voyage, he noticed three distinctive patterns of biological diversity, and I guess we spoke about two of them. First, species vary globally. Second, species vary locally. And then species that vary over a long period of time. We started with species that vary globally, all over the world. He noticed three species of flightless birds. Ostrich, rhea, and emu. Hang on a second. Not yet, Ya Abdullah. We are going to discuss this later. Okay. Now, we said in the point of organisms that differ globally, we said he noticed three flightless birds. They cannot fly, and they look like this. Rhea. Here we go. The one that is using the treadmill, please mute your mic. Rhea that lives in South America. Emu that lived in Australia.
Mister, your mic is closed.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. Yes. So I was saying, hang on a second. I was saying that uh, he spoke about ostrich. He spoke about ostrich that lived in Africa. He spoke about emu that lived in Australia and rhea that lived in South America. Those are different organisms or different species that live in different uh, continents, but they look somehow similar. This is the first thing that made him think about evolution. Why are those organisms similar? Although they live far from each other. Oh, maybe because they live in ecologically similar environments. Look, different yet ecologically similar species inhabited separated continents, separated continents. But their continents or their habitat are ecologically similar. What is the meaning of this? We have three different birds that lived in three different continents. They are supposed to be totally different from each other. Actually, they are different, but they have some similarities. Why? Because they live in similar environments in both three continents. So this was the first example. Also, the kangaroos, they live only in Australia. So this is a global difference. In the second example, or the second type of variation, we spoke about a species that vary locally, a species that vary in the same area. Looking at Isabel Island and Hood Island, those are two islands near South America, like here. We have a group of islands, something like Hawaiian Islands. For example, here we have Hood Island. This is small one. This is small one, and Isabel Island. He noticed that we have tortoises with dome-shaped shell, short neck, short legs. This is on Isabel Islands. But on Hood Islands, the look at this. The tortoises had curved. Look at this. Curved shell. They have long necks. They have long legs. Oh, what made this difference? Actually, if you look here, you will see the glass is plenty. There is plenty of grass here on Isabel Island. These tortoises didn't have to eat from the tall plants. But look at this on Hood Island. There is no food on the ground. There is no food on the ground. So these tortoises wouldn't survive if they didn't have long neck and curved shape shell. Okay, so those are two organisms that vary locally. Okay, I need someone to read the next part, please. Species that vary over time. Okay, Muhammad.
Yes, Mister.
Ah,
Species vary over time. In addition to collections specimens of living species, Darwin also collected fossils, which scientists already knew to be the preserved remains or traces of ancient organisms. Some fossils didn't look anything like living organisms, but others did.
So, what are the fossils that he started to collect? Look at this. Fossils are, look, remains or traces, like traces of dead organisms, like these. These are fossils. He started to collect fossils and compare them with the living organisms today to see what are the changes that happened to the species over long periods of time. Over long periods of time. Continue. This is called Glyptodont, Glyptodont, and this is the armadillo. He noticed that he found a fossil of the Glyptodont. He found a fossil of the Glyptodont. Hang on a second. Actually, these are the real fossils of the Glyptodont. Where is it?
So, Mister, he thinks that the tortoise on hood is the older
Not
version of
tortoise,
the
no,
tortoise.
no. He is speaking about different type of variation. The tortoises, this is called a species that vary locally, but he is speaking about the changes that happened over a long period of time. If you see here, this is a fossil for the Glyptodont. It was a giant animal with size or length that may reach 3 meters. 3 meters. Look at this. For example, this one. Look, this is a large fossil of the Glyptodont. Look at the armadillo. Look at this. This is today's armadillo. Its size may be maximum at most. Hang on a second, it is loading. The armadillo size is at most 0.5 meter, half meter only. The Glyptodont was a giant form. If you compare them, you would see that they are similar. But this is 3 meters and this is only half meter. Darwin thought that many changes happened over time for the Glyptodont that may change it into an armadillo. But actually, he didn't speak about this yet. We are just saying what are the different types of variation that he has noticed. He noticed different or differences between organisms in different continents, species that vary globally. He found differences between organisms in the same area, and this is what we call species that vary locally. And now he noticed differences between organisms along long periods of times, and we said this the species vary a long time. Okay, continue please. This is the explanation of what we saw now.
Darwin noticed that some fossils of extinct animals were similar to living species. One set of fossils unearthed by Darwin belonged to the long extinct Glyptodont, a giant armored animal currently living in the same area was a similar animal, the armadillo. You can see in figure 16.3 that the armadillo appears to be a smaller version of the Glyptodont. Darwin said of the organism that wonderful relationship is in the same continent between the dead and the living. Well, I do not doubt hereafter throw more light on the appearance of organic beings on our Earth and their the disappearance from it than any other class of fact. So why had Glyptodont disappeared and why did they resemble armadillos? Complete?
Thank you, Amanat. I'm sorry, I had a problem. I'm now unmuting myself. Abdurrahman Sameh, sorry, excuse me, I had a problem with my mic. Ah, Abdurrahman Sameh, do you hear me? Okay, Ahmed Gaber, I thought you want to read. Do you have a question, ya Abdurrahman? Okay, Ahmed Gaber, you can read.
It's okay, mister. Putting the pieces of the puzzle together. On the voyage home, Darwin thought about the patterns he had seen. The plant and animal specimens he sent to experts for identification set the scientific community buzzing. The Galapagos mockingbirds turned out to belong to three separate species found nowhere else. And the little brown birds that Darwin thought were wrens, warbles, and the blackbirds were actually all species of finches. They too were found nowhere else, though they resembled a South American finch species. The same was true of Galapagos tortoise, marine iguanas, and many plants that Darwin collected on the islands.
Okay, stop, thank you. Abdurrahman, if you want to read, just start reading. Darwin was stunned.
Darwin was stunned by these discoveries. He began to wonder whether different Galapagos species might have evolved from South America ancestors. He spent years actively researching and filling notebooks with ideas about species and evolution. The evidence suggested that species are not fixed and that they could change by some natural process.
This is, look at this. This is Galapagos Islands, a series of islands. Look, a series of islands that are located near South America. It has many different species of iguana, different species of tortoises. As you see here, this is a long-necked tortoise, and also the most variability happens in the, look at those, many different species of birds that are called finches. If these are the Galapagos Islands, every island has its own species of finches. Look, something like this. We will call it later adaptive radiation. One species in the center is loaded. One species in the center It evolved into many different species. He collected samples and saw that these organisms, all different birds, one bird like this, one bird like that, and another one like that, they look different, but actually they are all considered finches. Now he is starting to put the pieces together, to put the pieces together. Why are they finches? Actually, they have similarities, like they have many similarities, but they also have many differences, so they cannot be considered one species. Why? I'll tell you later that to consider two organisms belonging to the same species, if I said there is a species of finches that have many individuals, are those two individuals that belong to the same species? Actually, how can you prove it? They have to mate, like marrying each other. Not yet. The donkey and the horse can mate and they can produce offspring that is mule. So, is the donkey belonging to the same species of the horse? Actually, no. They don't belong to the same species. Why? Because the mule is infertile. It cannot have offspring. So those organisms cannot form a population. They are not two organisms of the same species. How did you know? They cannot produce fertile offspring. So looking at all those different shaped finches, actually we call them finches, but if you looked at their names, hang on a second, I can't zoom to the name. But if you looked at their names, you will find different names for different species. Why? Because they cannot mate. They cannot produce fertile offspring. They cannot produce fertile offspring, but they are all finches. Okay, here we go. I hope to see the names. You can't see the names. Maybe here I can see the names. See, all of these are finches. All are finches, but they belong to different species. They belong to different species. So, the summary of this lesson, I'll stop the video here, or we will continue. The summary of this lesson is that now Darwin saw different ways or different patterns of variation between organisms, and this led him during his voyage all these all these differences, all these relations between the organisms through visiting Australia, Africa, Europe, and South America. All these differences made him start thinking what made these organisms different, what made the Rhea and the Emu similar. Then, in the next lesson, he will start to be initiated more or convinced more that the organisms have changed over these long periods of time, because many different scientists will speak about that the earth has changed, so also organisms have changed. Also people, other scientists will speak about huge geographical change or geological changes in the earth. He will start thinking that the earth have changed, so organisms have changed also. Then some scientists will speak about evolution called Lamarck. He's actually not convincing at all. You will also hear about the theories speaking about the population growth, how the organisms may compete with each other, how animals may eliminate other animals. Then, after using these information in the first lesson and the other information gathered in the second lesson, Darwin will start to present his case, speaking about the evolution through natural selection. Do you know now? I am explaining we starting with which point to end with which point. We started with lesson 16.1. What made Darwin think about evolution? 16.2. What are the theories at this time? Other theories made by scientists proving that Earth changes and population changes and things like this. Those two lessons initiated or pushed Darwin to think about evolution and to present his case, speaking about the evolution in lesson 16.3. And then they starting to argue. So he made many evidences, or he started to prove it in lesson 16.4. We will speak about the evidences of evolution.